potential. There's a funny thing about it. We've heard our speakers talk about the enormous potential petrochemicals and the policy framework, this right conducive policy framework can have for Pakistan. But more importantly, there still remains a gap that is hindering from this potential to becoming a reality. How do we fill those gaps? How do we make sure that those gaps are not just filled in the immediate times, but also can be something which is scalable and we can build upon in the years and the decades to come? Especially because if you look at the forecast for the petrochemical industry around the world, it is something enviable, something that Pakistan needs to be a part of. Petrochemicals are rapidly becoming the largest driver of global oil demand. The growth in demand for petrochemical products means that petrochemicals are set to account for over a third of the growth in oil demand to 2030 and nearly half to about 2050. So we're not talking just tomorrow and day after. We're talking about the next decades and well into this century. How do we plan for that? Let's find out what the experts have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite our worthy moderator for this session. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Namir Industrial Chemicals Limited and the former chairman of PCMA. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Zafar Mahmood. Zafar Saab, we're trusting you with a very powerful segment. Please take a seat. I will also invite your panelists and then it will be handed over back to you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming this illustrious panel. First up, we have the CEO and the Executive Director of Engro Polymer and Chemicals. Please welcome Mr. Jahangir Piracha. Please also join me in welcoming the CEO of ACCA Pakistan. Please welcome Mr. Asif Juma. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Gatron Industries Limited. Please welcome Mr. Shabbir Diwan. Shabbir Saab is engaging with media, will be joining us shortly. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the CEO of Tufail Chemical Industries Limited, Mr. Zubair Tufail. Last but definitely not the least, the Chief Executive of Lotte Chemical Pakistan Limited. Please welcome Mr. Humair Ijaz. This conversation is titled as the Petrochemical Roadmap for Pakistan. We've spoken about potential. Translating that potential into a reality is a must. As my business coach would always say, do not just look at the potential, look at the reality of people. This could also make for great dating advice. But ladies and gentlemen, over to you, Zafar Saab, for this panel.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you everyone for participating in this session, and thank you the team for giving me the opportunity to moderate this session. First of all, I would like to have some questions with the panelists here. So my first question to you is that the Pakistan's petrochemical import is around $3 billion currently, and with the current pace and the inflation and everything, we expect that in next 8 to 10 years, they may exceed $5 billion annually. So under the circumstances, what do you think your company's vision will be? And how can we help the country in combating this import burden on the country? So starting with anybody, sir? Asad?
Thank you. And Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Corporate Pakistan Group, for actually putting together this seminar. And I think I would be greatly amiss if I didn't acknowledge the effort that actually went into bringing everyone together under one roof, on one platform, to talk about a policy that is long overdue. The absence of a petrochemical policy in Pakistan has actually, unfortunately, been the main reason for the underinvestment that has taken place in this sector of the economy. It's not that it's been totally devoid of investment. There has absolutely been investment, starting from ICI Pakistan itself, which invested in a polyester staple fiber manufacturing facility in 1982-83, which is a downstream petrochemical product. That was then followed subsequently, again by ICI Pakistan, with an investment in a PTA plant at Port Qasim, which is now owned by Lotte. It was divested some years ago. But again, that was all part of the integration. And what that actually tells you is this is a sector where you need a level of integration. But it doesn't always come in one go. So you can't actually just pick it up and plonk it down. You actually got to do it in phases. In the case of polyester, the phase was polyester staple fiber, polyester filament yarn. Then it went back into PTA. If you look at the consumption of petrochemicals and plastics per capita in Pakistan, again, we're at the low end of the pyramid. And that's because we don't have adequate availability and supply. And you find, and you can look at this across the globe, that whenever you increase availability, you increase usage. Now, what do we need as an industry to encourage investment? You need continuity of policy, you need predictability, you need transparency, and you need to recognize that investors invest for returns. So no one is saying that tariff should be a guarantor of profit. Tariff should be an equalizer of inequities that exist in the environment in which you operate. So, what are we looking at? If we want to invest, we're talking $3 billion. What are the industries? Whether it's Engro with a propane dehydrogenation unit, whether it's ICI with a polyester staple fiber expansion, Novatex with a further expansion in bottle polymer or filament yarn. So all this will happen. And then, in due course, we will need to look upstream. We will need to look upstream for an integrated complex, which will then actually start from refining to a cracker, and through the cracker, you have the olefins chain, the ethylene chain, you have your xylenes. So you look after your motor gasoline requirement, which we're in deficit, which we need to import. You will look at your polyethylene, your polypropylenes, your ethylene glycols. So it becomes one entire raft of products.
Thank you very much, sir. Shabir sir, your comments, please.
I think एक तो policy की जैसे आसिफ ने बात की. The other thing is that now we are at the right time where the downstream has grown and the midstream has grown. So we have that volume or that base on which the midstream can further go and the upstream can further grow. So this is the right time to, as they say, put all the pieces of the puzzle together by bringing in the policy. Because एक ज़माना था कि petrochemical midstream and upstream, the volumes, it's a chemical industry. So the volume of the plant, the scale of the plant was smaller, so investment was smaller. But technological improvement has brought the scale to a very high level. And particularly, the Chinese have gone far beyond in increasing the scale of one single plant. So that means the investment of one single plant also increases. So you need a lot of investment. And when it involves a lot of investment, the investor obviously seeks predictability down the line about the environment, about the tariff, about a lot of other things. So that's why petrochemical policy at this moment is very important.
Good, thank you very much. Tufal bhai, Zubair sir, आपके क्या comments हैं on the question was that Pakistan is already under heavy import bill, like for petrochemicals, we are already spending more than $3 billion annually, which are increasing like with every year. So if this trend goes on, so we may be like the import bill of the petrochemical may exceed $5 billion in a year. So what do you think it should be the measures the country should take, our industry should take, or if you talk about specifically about your company, what measures should we take?
You are right that today we are importing petrochemical worth about 3 billion. But in short period of time, it will cross 5 billion. Unless we go for import substitution, I would like to say here about Engro. as they are going for the PDH plant. This plant will replace imports of current imports of about 500,000 tons or more of polypropylene, which means it will be saving around, the current price is around $1,600 a ton. So $800 million it can save. So similarly, we have to look for the investment where we can replace the imports. If you replace the imports, it is same as you earn from the exports. Similarly, if it is an import substitution. So we all have to, in the sector, look for it. And I would like to say in our own industry, we are currently producing 110,000 tons of LABSA. It requires a back integration of lab, which we are working at the moment, and same company, UOP Honeywell, is doing our feasibility and all these things. And this is also an import of something about $200 million a year, $200 million a year.
Good.
So at this at this time, I think government have to give us certain basic assurances. We don't ask them for big duty protections or nothing, a minimum of duty protection, and then the continuation of the policies. That what we say today, when you say that you are exempt from tax, it has to be exempt from tax of all kinds. If you say that it is 10 years tax exemption, it should also be exempt from the turnover tax. Otherwise you say, oh no, income tax you don't pay, but you still pay 1.5% turnover tax. So you have to make the things very transparent. Okay, the local tax authorities can play with the Pakistani investors, but foreign investor will never be, they will never be happy with these kind of things. If you say anything, it has to be very transparent, clear. This is the only way you can make import substitution, you can bring foreign investors. The foreign investors are willing to come, but they need certain assurances which is required from the government.
Very good. Thank you very much. Umair bhai, any comments from your side, please?
Yes, I
Lotte
think
has been playing very important role in the country's overall chemical sector. So please, your comments.
so I think this petrochemical industry of Pakistan, we are actually now lost a lot of time. We are very behind. When I talk about the PTA industry, the PTA plant should have been expanded 5-6 years ago. And everything was there. The market is there, the demand is there, the population is driving the demand. But why the investor is not able to put the money on the table is simply because they have no assurance that once this investment is done, what is going to happen the year after in the next budget, in the next government. So, I mean, not having a policy which is independent of which government is there is very important. It has to be a longer term, 15-year, 20-year vision which needs to be implemented. That will only entice the shareholders to put money in. So Lotte, I represent Lotte, and Lotte is one of the biggest petrochemical companies in Korea. They are investing in Russia, in USA, in Vietnam. So when they are making these investment decisions, they never talk about or question me about, do you have the right manpower in Pakistan? Do you have the right talent in Pakistan? Do you have the demand in Pakistan? The only question that comes is, are you sure the tariff is going to stay through the next budget? Are you sure that minimum turnover tax will go away soon? So these are questions which we are struggling, and the role of a chief executive is becoming more like of going to the government on every budget, and that's the major part of the job is unfortunately to handle those issues. We like to be independent, we like to focus on the business, we would like the government to just give us a policy, a fair policy, a regionally competitive policy. Let us have that policy and then let us do our work to expand this business in Pakistan. So I think this is the first step, and I'm very happy that this symposium has been arranged, and we look forward that very soon, we are already late as I said, and we need this policy because Lotte is also ready for the investment and Pakistan needs it.
Thank you. Sir. Faisal Saab.
Ji, thank you, Zafar. So I think a lot of ground has already been covered. I can talk a little bit more about the projects which Engro is looking at. I think any mega investment. So let's go back a little bit in history and why policies are important. As Umair was just saying that you don't want, the investor wants a level of continuity. Now Pakistan, alhamdulillah, has always had a track record which is very, very good with policies. You know, whatever got committed in any policies, any change in government, the governments have honored those policies. So that gives, policy actually gives confidence to the investor that the change won't happen, and the commitments which are made, which we adhere to for the period that policy is, you know, applicable. Let's look at fertilizer policy. 2 million tons of fertilizer capacity got added. Imagine in today's money, if you had to import 2 million tons of fertilizer. It's about 1.5 to 1.7 billion dollars, and which is essential for food security. Now that policy was brought in 2012, multiple regime changes, political as well as military governments, but it stayed on. That gives the confidence to the investor that a policy would stay. Coming back to the petrochemical policy, which is for which we are having this symposium. First of all, I'm very, very thankful to Board of Investment and corporate group also for, you know, this organizing this important thing. I think that policy will unlock, and all the investors are here, you know, who have shown interest. But one important point, I think, which everybody must understand, that foreign investment at times comes in shape of joint ventures also. It is not just that the local investors, if they have a good project, they can always go out and pitch this as a joint venture opportunity, which brings in FDI also. So I'm not saying that people cannot do it locally, but at times there are technological challenges. At times you are bringing a new technology. You want people to join your projects, and could be a joint venture also. Engro is right now, so the last you know, fertilizer policy brought about good 2 billion plus sort of size of the investment in Pakistan, and I'm saying just 1 year it has saved you $1.6 billion of import substitution. If this policy is in place, you're talking about 500,000 tons of polypropylene, which is today, and by the time the plant sort of gets commissioned, it will be probably more nearer to 800,000 tons of. Now, these projects take time. They are long gestation projects. So a policy, if you give today, an engineer and, you know, put the plant, will take you 4 years to actually have the production. Imagine if you have multiple projects of this size. 4 billion is what's being promised if the policy is there. That's a very large investment which is being promised in Pakistan. Engro is looking at primarily greenfield projects, which is primarily in the area of polypropylene, which is our flagship program. They have committed, it's a listed company, so it's announced, they're doing engineering. Methanol, again, they're looking at that project. And our existing PVC business obviously has still room to go to the world scale, which will have additional investments coming in. Now, for the shareholders and people who want to invest, they want a continuity. They want to know what will stay when they make that investment decision, and what will be the guarantee that those things will not be taken away. If the incentives were not there, and Umair really very ideally spoke about it, you know, an international investor, the market demand is there, the skill set is, they have worked in Pakistan. Why the investment never came to Pakistan? That's a great question. If things, the way they are, were so good, why aren't people lining up and queuing up to come to Pakistan, and rather than going to Vietnam or other places? So if they are not coming to Pakistan, we must also, you know, analyze why they are not coming to Pakistan, and why they are not committing these large sums of money when the market demand is also there. I mean, the market exists, but they're not still coming, and that's the key question.
Good. So as such, sir, the market is there, and the potential of investment is there, and a lot of companies are ready to invest in the country. even all this difficult situation. But what we need is the consistency in policy and have a clarity, as Umair Saab very rightly said, the job of CEO is not to do the business, it's primarily to safeguard his interests. So this exercise, I have been heading the chemical committee on the tariff in my chemical association for last many years. So frankly speaking, we are spending almost 3 to 4 months every year on this budget exercise, where we try to ensure the interest of our industry, and then we keep negotiating and arguing with the government authorities. This is the job of every industrialist, to secure the interest. I fully agree, but if a clear policy is in place for a certain time period, it will give definitely a sort of surety to the investor, and more investors will come. With regards to chemical sector, we are not talking about the upstream right now, we are talking about the midstream. There's a lot of potential, like in the presentation we just had in the first session. So this country badly needs a cracker, whether it's a gas cracker, as a naphtha cracker, or the coal cracker. So we need to have that as well, but since the capital and required for that project is not available right now, so let's start with something. The something is that I fully endorse their views that let's start with the midstream, so that something is there, the market is built, and it will definitely give an opportunity for the people to come and invest in the upstream as well. So thank you very much for your comments. So my next question would be that you must have seen that transportation and freight has been a big challenge, especially in post-COVID, during COVID situation. So the freight charges, if I compare with China or any other country, has been, I think, 7 to 10 times what they were before COVID. So large companies were able to manage bulk supplies or whatever the option they had, but the most troubled sector was the SME. They were having a lot of trouble, a lot of difficulty in arranging the transportation. And my view, if we strengthen our industry, upstream industry and the midstream industry, this will definitely make this local supply of these things available. So we will not be worried about this part, whatever happens, what happened in the recent past. So I again need your views. Asif Saab, please.
Thank you. I think it's a good question, and you talk about the effect of higher freight rates or disruption in logistics and how it impacts the SME. It's actually impacted the entire industrial base. Okay, the SMEs are impacted more because they have issues with working capital. But when you have local production and you have local availability of raw materials, it increases the activity in that ecosystem, right? So when we talk about increasing demand, we talk about market penetration, we talk about adoption, it has to come through locally available raw materials. If we think that we can actually emerge as a major player in synthetic textiles or in PET long term by basing the industry mainly on imported intermediates, that's not going to happen. There'll always come a point where you're actually going to hit that glass ceiling. And the way around that, in terms of managing the entire value chain, is domestic investment.
Thank you, sir. Shibir Saab, your views, please.
The freight thing which happened in the
Aapka
world.
speaker only. Acha, speaker.
One thing is was very popular in the Japanese system, just in time. So the disturbance in the freight and the logistics sort of put a dent on that policy of just in time. Means the industry has to now keep a larger stock of raw materials in their hands. And that, you're right, it has affected SME more because they have limited working capital resources. And that's where what Asif said, you need local supply to help them meet that challenge. The other thing is that in the petrochemical industry, as you go from in some levels of midstream and in some levels of upstream, the raw material is no longer physical, it's liquid. So the current problem is container problem. So if you have local production of the midstream here, that local production is importing liquid cargo. So that gives you a diversification as far as freight options are concerned. So that also is a thing which will help Pakistan if the petrochemical industry expands.
Thank you, sir. Zabas bhai?
I think in the last few, in the COVID period, we have seen that the freights were playing the important role. Freights tripled, or maybe they have gone
10 times.
not 10 times exactly, but at least 4 or 5 times freights have gone up all over the world. Then those industries who were dependent on the imported raw material, they suffered a lot. And then it also affected our exports. We are not able to export because we are not able to get sufficient containers. Even the product is ready, at the end of the time they say the containers is shut out.
Yes.
So these are the challenges we are facing. But I think this is the time that local industry should look for such products where they can get the raw material locally. And in my opinion, Tharcoal is a place from where we can make, after coal gasification, we can make many raw material. I would like to say like urea also. In China, there is several urea plants. They are totally making urea from coal. So Pakistan also have to look, because you have sufficient quantity or stocks of Tharcoal, which is good for next 100 or 200 years. So we should look into it. But to make the coal gasification, it requires special support from the government. A private sector cannot do. Of course, Anglo started doing business with having a power plant over there near the Tharcoal plant, but it needs much more than that. Government should come a little bit extra to support them. Ultimately, it will support the government that the imports will come down. So we have to see and look into it, that how the other countries, especially I would say China, how they are using coal for the petrochemical industry. Pakistan also should do in the same way.
Thank you, sir. Umair bhai, any comments from your side on the freight part?
Yes, I think it's a major issue right now. But if you look at the petrochemical industry, all of us here, we cannot dictate our pricing. We have to follow the regional prices, whatever are prevailing. So the PTA that I'm selling in Pakistan cannot be claimed as it is different from the PTA coming from Thailand or the PTA coming from China. So issue always comes down to how good you are in your supply chain and in your purchasing. How much can you say? Because your price is fixed. You're going to sell at this price, no matter what. So it's the costs that you have to look at. And this freight market has exerted a lot of pressure on those costs. And those costs, unfortunately, at times have to be passed down to the downstream industry, and they have to absorb it. How to get rid of this problem? Very simple. Use as much as domestic material as possible. So domestic industry needs to grow. So I'm importing paraxylene. I wish paraxylene was available in Pakistan. Yeah. I mean, our job would be much easier. Our business would be more stable. But we are dependent on importing paraxylene, and we have to look around the region and find paraxylene. And then there are issues like India was the cheapest source for paraxylene for us, but we decided to ban trade with India. So we have to move to an expensive source. The further sources, the more the freight. So yes, it's a key issue for us, and the solution again comes down to produce as much as in Pakistan as possible.
Thank you, sir. Jangir bhai, your...
Okay. I think, so freight, a very interesting question. Primarily, it was the containers. The freight cost actually substantially increased for anybody. So intermediates which are not made in Pakistan were coming in containers. They don't come in bulk, and they don't come in a liquid form. So primarily that really showed, the COVID showed us that how important it is to produce some of these key things which comes as raw material in containers. Ideally that all material should be produced in Pakistan. Now, as Shabir bhai was also illustrating here, that the feedstocks for intermediates, which could be either in a gaseous form like ethylene, paraxylene, the freight charges did not, because these are specialized ships, they can only carry, let's say, a specific gaseous chemical, and they're dedicated for this service. The freight cost for them did not go expansionally high or remained about same. So there was hardly any impact of freight on these, specialized containers which were bringing specialized materials to Pakistan. So if Pakistan has an intermediate, all the intermediates which is required by our downstream, if they are produced in Pakistan, you would not have ideally such high freight cost. And also it will reduce port congestion also, because if you look at Pakistan, Karachi's bulk of trade is, Gwadar is coming up. Everything is going through these two ports out of Karachi, And these are, same places you're bringing raw material. If that raw material ideally is coming as a gas or as a liquid, you're also reducing the load on your ports, congestion, damages. We see all of those issues through our ports also. So COVID, I think, was an opportunity when the entire system was extremely stressed. And we saw what happened to economies which were very, very dependent on some of the key products coming from, China or from Middle East, and how it impacted and the disruptions hit businesses. I think that also is a very important, incentive for our industry to create capacity in Pakistan, where our downstream industry or the economy does not suffer because of any of these disruptions which will happen, because of supply chain problems. Like right now, I think China has again sort of done Shenzhen. I think Shenzhen's lockdown has gone into lockdown. So anybody who's buying anything from Shenzhen is going to be in deep trouble, So those things will happen. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your nice views and very candid views. So, as such, in my own experience, the bulk freights haven't gone up that much, but the containerized cargo has been a trouble. So, if the industry is localized here, so we produce locally. So, besides providing just in time, as Shabir Sahab said, so we will be able to save on the extraordinary cost which we are currently paying. It's not only the cost, it's the time as well. The material which used to come in 1 month time is now taking 3 months, and sometimes it's not guaranteed. And most of the vessels don't come direct, so they come via some other country. So at times the containers got stuck in between and they remain there for weeks. So hope that if we develop our midstream or upstream industry in Pakistan, so this will be a great help to the SME sector as well, and there will be growth of industry in that sector as well. Thank you, sir. So now my specific questions about the respective companies of your respective company. Shabir Sahab, I'll start with you. Your company is, mashallah, exporting more than goods worth more than $300 million. So I would like to listen some views from you, and we should be a guideline for other companies as well. What do you want to say about how to increase exports for other sectors as well?
Yes, we are the largest non-textile exporter of the country. Means we are exporting non-textile products and nearly 5 or 6 products, not only one product, and exports of over $200 million. So, one of the basic things is when we set up this plant, the key element, there are many things. Obviously, you have to have the right marketing setup, you have to have the right product, everything. So, सबसे पहले तो फिलॉसफी जो खालिद ने कहा ना कि जुनून है तो मंजिल नज़र आ रही है, तो वो तो एक चीज़ है, मगर कॉन्क्रीट थिंग में आई थिंक द की एलिमेंट वाज फॉर अस टू पुट अप अ कैपेसिटी which was more than the local demand of that product. So that gave us an exportable surplus, but that carried a huge risk in the sense that we were not able to export that 30-40% exportable surplus that we had in our capacity. That would mean that our break-even would be a problem, So what did we do to allay that? Or what did we seek to allay that? I think to allay that risk, one of the key things is the local tariff protection for the local sale that you make. Because when you have a tariff protection, that means that your commercial break-even, means the quantity that you need to produce to achieve no loss, no profit, is at a higher level. So you take that risk of putting up a higher capacity with an exportable surplus. So that is most important as far as we were concerned. Obviously, we had those ups and downs, as Umair said. We had to go through phases where that was disturbed. But Alhamdulillah, the other thing that we looked at while putting up this exportable surplus, to have a market where at least 1/4 of your exportable surplus is, I wouldn't say assured, but you have an edge there. So at least you know that 1/4 of your export is going to be a little bit easier compared to the rest 3/4. Then you have a base, you can give a referral to that 1/4 and you expand on that. So Alhamdulillah, and then obviously pray. The third thing is grace of God, that market did not, or that edge in the market did not change while we came into production. And the fourth thing is that the challenges in exporting is that all these countries that you export to put up trade defense measures. We, in the last 15 years, had to face 5 trade defense measures 5 times. Country A, country B, country C, country D. And country D did it twice, or rather region D, because that was Europe. And we had to go to the European Court of Justice, we had to go to the WTO, and finally it was removed. It means that they did not impose the proper or the right calculated duty or countervailing duty. But it took 3-4 years. So for that, the other important thing is not to depend on one market when you're exporting. You have to have other markets which you can expand to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So basically the key is that if we develop local capacities and we meet all the internal demands, so the excess capacity can be exported and we can enter into non-traditional exports as well. So my company also did the same. So we are producing a product for toilet soap called soap noodles. So we started with local production, but after meeting that, we had 25-30% excess capacity available that we are utilizing for the exports, and we are taking the advantage of these excessive freights. So those freights are giving us an opportunity to enter into the markets. And so recently, the government has signed this transit route with Uzbekistan via Afghanistan. So that will also give an edge to companies like us, so we can tap that market, and there's a big potential. And I would ask everyone, whoever has the surplus capacity, to see that market as well. So irrespective of the margin we earn on the export, we should do it, because whenever you do an export, there is some value addition, and that value addition is a profit for the country. So we must do that.
One thing I would like to add here is that when we talk of tariff protection, see, if you're investing with an exportable surplus, means your spare capacity, means, for example, you're investing $100 and you are exporting 40%, or you have exportable surplus of 40%, the tariff protection that you are getting is not on that $100. It's on the 60% of the capacity. So even though it may seem that you're getting 5%, 10% protection, but that is in fact half or 60% protection, because the 40% production is not being protected. So that one has to look at from that perspective also while giving protection levels.
Very, very true. Very true. Thank you very much. Asif sir, my question to you is that, mashallah, your company has remarkable performance since you guys have acquired the company from that group. So would like to see your experience, kindly share your best sort of turnaround story and all this for the audience.
Sorry? Right. Yes. So the company was divested by AkzoNobel. ACCA Pakistan was divested by AkzoNobel at the end of 2012. So the transfer of shareholding took place in December, in fact, 27th of December, 2012, and it was acquired by the Yunus Brothers Group, with the beneficial shareholding residing within Lucky Cement. And that's been a most incredible journey for ICI Pakistan. You know, we talk a lot about foreign investment, we talk about multinationals, we talk about attracting the overseas investor, but when you have a entrenched, vested, long-term local investor, that investor will always be more committed to Pakistan, and it's based on the experience of that local investor, you will actually be able to attract foreign investment. So that is absolutely key, that when we look at investment, and if you look at the kind of economic development, industrialization that has taken place in the region, right? All over Far East, Southeast Asia, South Asia, it's largely been driven by domestic investment. And when you have an investor who has a long-term vision, you have an investor that understands the market, they have far greater risk appetite. They understand what goes with the territory, because it's not, developing economies are not smooth sailing. They have their challenges, but with those challenges come their rewards. So, for us, it's been a phenomenal experience and journey. But just one other thing that I would like to add, and this is just going back to the question that Shabir commented on, and which is, when you have large investments, particularly in the petrochemical industry, these are capital-intensive industries, and you have large sort of things, size of capital that are invested. You can never get your demand supply quite right. Whenever you invest, there will always be oversupply. Yes. You will always have exportable surplus. Now, if you don't have the adequate protection to ensure that your domestic sales are maximized, you are always going to be prejudiced in terms of arriving at your economic break-even to be able to export. And you will always have exportable surpluses till such time as market demand catches up. It's very seldom that, like I said, you'll be investing and go into a business where demand supply will exactly match, or if there is such huge excess demand that you're actually short in terms of supply.
If you allow me to add here, unlike other industries which are exporting, if I'm putting up a weaving industry or a garment industry, if there is no demand, I don't get orders, my utility cost doesn't go up. I just close that particular machine, or even close that particular khata if I have 2, 3, 4 khatas. But if I'm a chemical industry, petrochemical industry, there they have to run the whole plant, and if you scale down the plant, the utility consumption goes skyrocketing up.
Yes.
So therefore, the protection level is most important, unlike other export-based industries.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Zubair sir, I would like to ask listen from you about the success of your company as well. Being a local business, you have excelled in your product. So kindly share your views for the benefit of other industry as well, please. Thanks.
Actually, we started with a single product which was being imported at that time, and it was used in the, I would say, surfactant industries, making detergent powders and all these things. And at the moment, this product which we are producing right now is about 110,000 tons. And it is replacing the imports for about $150 million a year. If we were not producing it locally, so it has to be imported from outside. Here I appreciate one of the MNCs who guided us, that they were buying these products from Korea, China and other places. They asked us to put up this factory. We started with a smaller production capacity of 25,000 tons, and which in 10 years become 110,000 tons. And now the next step is, and we are already exporting our products to USA, to Africa, to South America, and also...
How much capacity do you export? How much?
Right now our export is about 20% of our production.
Oh, great.
And in this export...
And in terms of value, how much is the...
Sorry?
In terms of value?
It is about $24–25 million.
Oh, that's...
So the other thing is that in our price, 30% or 35% is the freight.
Oh.
With 35% freight, we are still able, we are exporting to US paying about $12,000 per container.
Okay.
But still we are able to compete in the international market. And now we are going for back integration. Right now we are importing our raw material from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. But now we have decided that we will put up our own back integration project for lab. And we are, UOP Honeywell is doing the feasibilities and all things. We have now reached to the point that we are going to sign an agreement in next 3 to 4 months' time.
Thank you.
And then it will not only provide lab to Pakistani market or Pakistani industry, it will also be able to export 50,000 tons of lab in the international market, where the value of that would be around 50,000 would be around roughly, because it costs around $1,800 a ton today. So if it is $1,800 a ton today, 50,000 means a lot of money.
Thank you, sir. Umair sir, in beginning, this plant has a lot of turbulence, lot of problems, so it changed hand as well. So since you took over, so in the last 5 years, you have shown, mashallah, phenomenal growth in the company and a lot of big turnaround on the bottom line as well. So it's a project which is really a landmark for the country. So we would like to have your views on the success story of this company, please.
I think when I talk about the story of our company, the word success doesn't come to mind, the word survival comes to mind. And frankly speaking, and that's the right word, I think it was the first petrochemical initiative in Pakistan. The UK government, the Pakistan government had to sit down together and sign a sovereign guarantee for this plant to be put up against certain government tariff protection, etc., etc. I think the point that was missed out at that point, unfortunately, was that the kind of infrastructure that was required for this plant to run, nothing was there. Water, they had to put up a 54-kilometer pipeline. Electric grid station was to be put up. There was no effluent treatment plant. So there was nothing basically. It's like putting all the puzzles together to make this plant work. So that first 10, 15 years of the business where ICI was there and struggling and surviving, that was only because of high infrastructure costs. So the costs of this infrastructure was so high in Pakistan that they could not compete with the regional pricing. And as I said, pricing is not in the control of our businesses. We have to sell at international prices. Subsequently, when ICI exited and Lotte came to Pakistan and they wanted to make a footprint in Pakistan, taking up this plant, they were interested in PTA business. They were already doing PTA business in Korea. So when they come in at a tariff protection of 7.5%, and they have a very good plan with them that we are going to spend these 3-4 things. We are going to reduce our use of acetic acid by some recovery plant. We are going to put up a power plant to make our own electricity, because the plant was losing production and higher variable cost because of repeated failures by Karachi Electric. And so this process plant cannot be dependent. It had to have it. So Lotte had a plan to survive at 7.5%. They stepped in. Within 1 year, our tariff went to 3%. So they just got a shock when they entered the business. Yes, so that was their first shock. And the owner of Lotte, whenever he has a dialogue with me, I get that opportunity once a year for 1 hour to talk to him one-to-one. And he always has this question: how is the tariff? I mean, he's sitting in Korea and he's talking about tariff. So this is the problem. Anyway, so the company has survived, and now last 5 years have been good for the company. It has a turnaround, and if I reflect on it, why is this turnaround? It is some stability has come. We have learned a lot to look internally to reduce our costs. But Madam Chairman is sitting there, and I've been visiting her, and she's been kind enough to understand. And this tariff has now become stable at a regional competitive level. China is 5%, India is 5%, so Pakistan 5% should remain intact. And That one thing has worked. It has given the major shareholder some stability that, okay, keep investing, keep doing this, keep maintaining the plant, it is okay, it's still a good business. So ours is a story of survival, and what I see as success is what I see in India and in China. In 1997, this plant was put up at a capacity of 450,000 tons. India was at that time 600,000 tons, very comparable. China at that time was 5 million tons. Today, China is 55 million tons. India is touching 7 million tons. We have the same plant which is surviving. Why? It's only because there is no policy, there is no guideline, there is no confidence in the investor that if I put $500 million, it is protected for the next 10 years and I will get some returns out of it. So I think we have taken a very big step in this symposium, and I hope that the message gets across and we do get a policy which is competitive and we can invest more.
Mayor Sahab, your experience, in fact, further strengthens our aim and our logic. Why to have a policy before investing any major amount in this country? Thank you very much, sir. Lastly, Jahangir Sahab, mashallah, you have invested about $200 million in this petrochemical project in the last 4 years, and you are now become a player of scale. So, would definitely like to have to listen your conviction in this petrochemical business and the way forward. Mashallah, tremendous performance. Your turnover has gone to double from the last year. And if I see from in the last 5 years, so it's 4 times almost. So good performance and very good job, sir. Thanks.
Thank you. I think very important point, I think, which you were illustrating is that if you are already a petrochemical player and how you perform in that business will set the stage for your next ambition and next level of investments in that sector. If you are struggling, and I think Umair just illustrated the example of PTA. I mean, if you're already struggling, you don't have the conducive policies, why would you go and invest more in that business? So Engro obviously did an investment. Our first sort of forte in petrochemical was through our PVC investment, as Mr. Khalid Masood was also illustrating. And that business also struggled for a number of years. And one of the learnings from that business, struggle was that you can only do not bring small plants, bring a world scale capacity, and that world scale capacity has to be globally competitive. Now that is a much larger investment and a much larger, you need a much larger market size. That is a very important point. And as in this symposium, I think Riaz Khan also shared with us that there are multiple now intermediates which are reaching that level for the Pakistani market to achieve that world scale size. So once you are globally competitive, what does it mean? Your fixed cost, your variable cost, your energy efficiency, you're probably getting the best and the latest technology coming in for that. So you are generally, you're positioning yourself for, ideally being globally competitive, and that is an advantage with which you will start the business. Now, this is a much more bigger hurdle to cross in terms of investment. PDH, polypropylene project, which we are looking at the maximum, the biggest size world scale plant which is possible, which will be more than the Pakistan's demand. So ideally, if you go out and buy a plant of the size which will be smaller or matches Pakistan's demand, economically probably it's more better for Engro to do that type of thing. But then long term, it will always struggle because you will not have that globally competitive technology with you. And that's an extremely important point. When that capacity comes on stream, you will have surplus capacity. I think, Asif, you also illustrated. When you get these world scale plants, the government is not giving protection for that entire capacity. It is the capacity which will get sold in Pakistan. And some of that surplus capacity, because Pakistani market will eventually grow also, will earn you, foreign exchange in terms of exports. Maybe the value add is not that substantial, but still some money will be coming back to the country. And obviously you have created jobs for that, and there's a lot of sort of other businesses. And I think that's very important for us. So how your business, you perform in a business also sets stage that will you invest. Now, because last few years we started seeing some improvement, and I must say here that an important area which government has done is this, separation of FBR and NTC. National Tariff Commission has played a substantial role in how the industry now looks at their businesses. It's much more easier to go and talk to. It's a dialogue which is not just budget focused, but it can continue the entire year. And they listen to us, they understand, and in the end, objective is to protect all segments of that chain. So it could be downstream, midstream, upstream, and the cascading of the tariffs. So all that has really helped some of that stability which you are seeing in last 3 to 4 years in the petrochemical industry also. I think Umair illustrated, I think we felt the same change, and I think that change has been a great change. Now, NTC can play its role, but it's again a limited mandate. It's going to be for that year, and they do look at things. They don't change everything very fast, but there is no guarantee for investment that they can't change. So under a policy, as we said, that guarantee will come. Taking you back, so PDH, as I said, polypropylene will be a world scale plant. It will have opportunities of export for us. I think everybody sitting here is kind of committing to a world scale size. So there will be some surplus capacities in the beginning which will get exported, and that will be fairly large. Our own experience, we invested last year in 100,000 tons of additional PVC capacity. We are not world scale still, we are at 300. World scale is more like 500,000 tons to 400,000. So we still need to go one odd step more, which could be $200 to $300 million of more investment before you reach actually the world scale size. But just this investment created opportunity for us to, last year, because we had some surplus capacity, export approximately around $30 million worth of PVC resin. And that opportunity will exist even for the intermediate. Ideally, like His Excellency, the Korean ambassador said, Korea, bulk of their petrochemicals are being sold as part of cars and air conditioners and mobile phones. Those are the kind of value add, typically from a commodity, which is resin, to a product. If you make a nice product, a high quality world scale product, which the actual consumer buys, is generally 4 to 7 times price. So if you're just buying $1,000 of that resin, that $1,000 resin, if it goes into a product which has a branded value, it is 4 to 7. So $4,000 to $7,000 can be earned by the country, if you put it in a product. So I think that downstream industry only develops when you have local production. Nobody has done it with fully importing their intermediates or to date, no other country. Maybe Pakistan might be one, but I don't think so. Nobody has ever cracked that thing. And Vietnam is a clear example. As soon as their export industry boomed, they brought in intermediates now, and Vietnam is not selling any petrochemicals, but they are selling products which are made with petrochemicals and high-end branded products. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Further to your statement about the NTC's role in the tariff rationalization, Madam is sitting here, so I must appreciate the kind of effort they have put in last 3 years. That was enormous. They have reduced custom duty to 0, I think, on more than 2,000 items, if I'm not, I think it's more than 2,000. So that's really gave a lot of help to the country. So the only issue is that you very rightly said that currently we have the production, but there is no guarantee what will happen tomorrow. So with the change of hand, change of government, change of policies, everything changes. So the main purpose of this policy is to have something firm, guaranteed, so that investor he focuses on the business rather than on the on saving his duties. So thank you very much for your valuable inputs. My last question to you is that what three things that you think Pakistan needs to stimulate investment in the petrochemical sector? Anyone who wants to add, please. Question is, what three things you think that you need for investment in Pakistan?
Yeah, so I think looking at these midstream petrochemical plants, the policy needs to address two things. One is the simpler thing, which is just decision making. That's about tariff and taxes and these kind of monetary impacts. The other, which is a difficult one and which the government needs to focus on how to do, is the infrastructure. And infrastructure is very important. I mean, you have a PTA plant somewhere in Thailand. It has effluent treatment facility provided by the government. It has water, power, everything is provided by the government, and there are synergies within the complexes, but that's something we miss out in Pakistan. So I think policy, I see that policy should be covering two basic things: what they are going to do about the infrastructure and what are they going to do about the tariffs and taxes.
Okay. Anything else, sir? Asif bhai, anything you want to add, please?
The one thing that we have to recognize, we're talking large sums of money in terms of the investment outlay. You need to have predictability, transparency, and you've got to have a safe and secure environment. No one has talked about security, no one has talked about safety. Reality is you have to have that. All these countries that have grown, all these countries that have invested, one of the things that they've had is they've actually had stability, political and economic stability. So let's not please take that off the radar. It's very important.
Thank you. Thank you. Zubair sir?
I would like to say, let us just see about Lotte. Except in Pakistan, in every country they have expanded. I don't know how many times. As he mentioned initially, that we were 400,000 tons capacity in Pakistan for PTA. India went to, I don't know how many million tons, and 5 or 7 million tons.
Yeah. 7 million tons.
So we just analyze ourselves. The government should analyze what they have done wrong. They should, why they are not able to make this 400,000 tons to 1.2 million tons.
Yeah.
There was a requirement in the country. We are importing. Then there is an international market. So we can easily find out. You also know every year you go 2 months to FBR office. Why we should go to FBR office? We don't. Is this our business? Our business is to do production. Our business is to export, and not to beg to the government office that please do this, so that my business can survive. So they are just talking about survival of the business. And then another thing I would like to say for the local investors, they should invest with the capacity more than the domestic market. They should always have some exportable surplus. It is that surplus will go in the international market. Other thing is the domestic market demand is also growing. Right now, as we saw in the initial presentation, that we are just consuming 8 kilograms of polymer per person, whereas all our neighboring country, India, is 13. Then there are countries, there is 20, 25, 30, 50 kilograms.
144 as
yes,
well, I think.
144 is in the USA. But anyway, we don't say about USA, but at least this 18, when 18 becomes 16 or 20, how much scope for the petrochemical industry in Pakistan? And I believe similarly as this PDH plant is coming in Pakistan, okay, today is little more than our domestic demand, or maybe 30–40% more. But this all, whatever polypropylene they will produce in Pakistan, surplus will be exported. It will go like a sugar. Like sugar is exported, similarly polypropylene will be exported from Pakistan.
Surely. Thank you, sir. Shabir sir, any comments from your side, please?
You said that what the government should do, Mayor rightly said about the infrastructure, but one of the key elements of infrastructure is the port facilities. I think the government should now already start planning about improving or increasing the port facilities, because if you grow, then the bottleneck would be the port. So that's one thing that the government should do. The other thing is, as far as petrochemicals is concerned, is the turnover tax, because there's a big retarding factor. In the initial years, the returns are not that much. So this turnover income tax becomes a fee rather than an income tax. So that is important. And the other thing is that I wish Engro all the success, but when you put up a pioneering product which is not being produced in Pakistan, you have to remember that you are taking over the market of the foreign supplier, you know. So obviously that foreign supplier loses that market when you produce local, when you're making a pioneer product. So you will face a lot of challenges there. They might start dumping or whatever. So the anti-dumping actions should be quick. And our experience so far is that even if they're quick, the importer lobby finds ways to, you know, get around the anti-dumping. 4 years, 5 years, hardly 80%, 20% gets collected, 80% due to court stay orders, etc., doesn't get collected. So that is also very important.
Yes, you're right. Like we have been able to get the anti-dumping duties implemented, but somehow the other they were set aside by the court and all these things. So that's a challenge, another challenge. So let's see how to fix that part as well. Thank you very much. Jahangir sir, your comments, please.
So I think adequately covered by everybody. One, important element is that lots of good work also got done, like this NTC separation from FPR. Pakistan, unfortunately, has a track record of, going 5 feet, you move forward and then you go back 3 feet, That should not happen. And I think people have covered about infrastructure, and I think security environment also. When you do such large projects, ideally they will happen in areas nearer to the ports, Gwadar, Karachi, Port Qasim, or sort of nearer to the ports. Security environment in those regions have to be extremely high and, improved somehow, because a lot of expats have to be brought in to do those projects. And one incident and your entire, experts, subject matter experts, they just fly out. So I think some of the good policy moves which got done, and I gave an example of NTC as a very clear one. We are sitting here and talking about a further investment and talking about a policy now. If that step had not been taken and you were still sort of going through that FBR thing, the industry wouldn't even be thinking, you're always fighting every budget type of an approach. So that change has definitely helped us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And with this, I think we should end our session. And thank you very much for your valuable comments, and hope that these things will be helping the government in improving their policy. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much to my able panel, and my mashkook bag needs to be on stage before somebody throws it out of the venue. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. May I also take this opportunity to invite the honorable member of CPG, and she is someone who's always been a force for good. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of the Global Council members for ACCA. We have with us Ms. Ayla Majid. May I request her to please come up on stage and present mementos to this honorable panel. Thank you, Ayla. First up, maybe I request you to present one to our honorable moderator, Mr. Zafar Mahmood, CEO of Namir Industrial Chemicals Limited and the former chairman of PCMA. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to present one to Mr. Humair Ijaz, the Chief Executive of Lotte Chemical Pakistan Limited. Gentlemen, the next one is for Mr. Jahangir Piracha, the CEO and Executive Director of Engro Polymer. Thank you, Ayla. May I request you to please stay up on stage with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the advisor to the Prime Minister on Commerce and Investment. We are honored to have with us Mr. Abdul Razak Dawood. May I request you, sir, to please come up on stage and present some of the mementos, sir. Razak Saab, may I request you to present the first memento to Mr. Asif Juma, the CEO of ICI Pakistan. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, to Mr. Shabir Diwan, the CEO of Gatron Industries Limited. Last but definitely not the least, may I request you to present a memento to the CEO of the Chemical Industries Limited, Mr. Zubair Dufail. Very insightful panel. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you all to come together for a photograph. May I also request Mr. Fayaz Khan and Mr. Mohammad Asfar Ehsan to please join us for a photograph, please. May I also request our co-host, Mr. Sajid Aslam from the ACCA, to join this group photograph. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for this wonderful panel. May I request Mr. Abdul Razak Daud Sahab to please stay up on stage with us.